The metaverse. It's one of the hottest topics in retail right now, with some of the biggest names and brands diving in head first. But as news continues to surface about the metaverse, it seems so that more and more questions are raised to the surface. What is the metaverse? What does it even do? How does it work? And will it replace traditional retail altogether? It's a hot topic that will certainly lead to some interesting in-depth discussion topics today. Welcome to this brand new episode of The Digital Retailer. Hello and welcome everyone to a brand new episode of the Digital Retailer Podcast, our podcast that takes conversations deep into the world of retail innovation, technology, and process changing evolution. My name is Marc Babin, your host, and it's great to welcome you to this brand new episode that will tackle a topic as fresh as a summer rose. Now, from that intro, you will of course know that today we are talking about the metaverse. It is a topic that we certainly are hearing a lot about these days, but do we even know what it actually is or what it actually means? Now, this is no light topic, and to ensure that we give it the full in-depth recognition that it deserves, we're excited to welcome a digital expert to the retail space, John Readman. John is the founder and CEO at Moto25, a digital agency that works with a handful of household retail names to encourage, support, and realize their full potential. And since one job is simply overrated in 2022, John is also the founder and product owner at Bosco, a marketing and data intelligence software solution developed by a team of leading e-commerce practitioners, global digital marketing specialists, and some of the most experienced data scientists in the world. John, it's great to have you on the show today, and given such an impressive CV, really looking forward to your take and your thoughts on the metaverse, a topic that is still very, very fresh. So again, thank you for being here and welcome to the show.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Marc. It's a pleasure to be here. That intro made me sound like I might actually know what I'm talking about. So hopefully I won't let your listeners down.
Absolutely. You do know what you're talking about. If not, we'll fake it till we make it. But no, I'm very happy to have you here. Thank you for being on the show. And like I said, really looking forward to your thoughts on this discussion. So I suppose this is such a new and complex topic. We should really start with a bit of an overview of what the metaverse is and its immediate impact on the retail industry. So John, I know this is like asking what is the universe? It's as broad as that, but in a short summary for those who perhaps are still new to the topic, can you give us your take and understanding of what the metaverse is and what the vision is?
Yeah, I think if we actually think about the metaverse, it's probably what everybody thought e-commerce and the internet was going to be right at the beginning, when we first had the vision back in the 90s of like, I'm going to go online, I'm going to put my shop online. And then everybody realized that the internet couldn't cope with putting a physical experience online. So we ended up with these flat product lists, right? So basically what the metaverse is enabling brands and brand owners or experience owners to do is create a much more engaging and a much more absorbing experience for the user. And there's two examples I'll give that will bring this immediately to life for people. So fundamentally, the metaverse will help people either increase brand exposure, hopefully in the future, actually help advertise and sell products, or maybe even transact and buy product, which is already happening in certain instances. The two examples I give, which if there's parents on here, they will be very familiar with Fortnite. And this is probably one of the first examples of the metaverse and what's going on and how this is going to impact day-to-day life. And for teenagers and kids, this is just going to be normal, right? The reason is middle-aged people like myself, we're having to learn about the metaverse, like hopefully some of the listeners on here, is because we're not immersed in it day to day. So I'm going to first of all talk about Fortnite, and then I'm going to talk about a cycling app that maybe some of the mammals, the middle-aged men in Leica, are listening to this, may be familiar with, which is a cycling app called Zwift. So I'm going to just talk about these two things, and this hopefully will just bring it to life and explain what it is. But if you think about Fortnite, I was at a conference probably 8 years ago, and somebody said virtual money, and people are going to be buying virtual things in a virtual world, and it's going to be worth billions. And I was sat there going, this is ridiculous. This is absolutely ridiculous. Who's going to pay for a costume for a character in a game? Who on earth is going to do that, right? And you're thinking, well, that's ridiculous. But now buying a skin in Fortnite is a thing, and they generate a huge amount of money because people want to express themselves in a digital way in a virtual world. And then on top of that, they're now hosting concerts with real live artists in these environments, and people can either go for free or buy tickets, or it's becoming a whole space for people to not only interact but also engage with their friends. And I was trying to explain to another parent the other day about, is Fortnite good or bad? And I'm like, well, there's the benefits of teamwork, there's camaraderie, there's communication skills, because they're going online, connecting with all their friends, talking to their friends, coming up with strategy to win this game. And they're like, but isn't it really violent? I said, it's not about the violence. It's and actually, really, is it really violent compared to? There's loads of science around kids, boys particularly, wanting to pick up bits of stick and pretend they're a gun. So what's happening is about creating an environment in where a brand can engage its users in a way they want to engage, but exchange potentially money for retail virtual things. But in the future, those virtual things might be real things. Right. So this is then I suppose this then gets into the whole NFTs conversation, which isn't what today's about, but that is also a very hard thing to explain to people who don't know about it. But I suppose the easiest way to explain it is people buying skins in Fortnite is a good example of the metaverse, or people then also having brand extensions. And the other example I would say for those users who use Snapchat, you can actually go in and dress your little icon in Snapchat, your emoji or whatever you want to call it, your avatar, with different branded products. Right, so you can go put Nike, so you can go put yourself some Air Jordans on, or you can go put loads of different things. And these companies are creating things in the metaverse. So when your little icon appears on the Snapchat map, that it's dressed in the same brands that you might be wearing in the real world, right? And it's only going to be a matter of time before you can buy additional clothes to dress. So actually, will the brand owners be able to make money without even having to manufacture any trainers by selling virtual trainers? Right? That's going to happen. Right? That is going to happen. And then I suppose the other sort of more maybe easier to understand thing, Marc, is the cycling app Zwift. So I can go onto my turbo trainer at home. I can plug it into the computer, and it picks up my exact speed of my bike and cadence of my bike, and I can go into a virtual world and cycle against my real friends who also have a virtual avatar in the same virtual world at exactly the same time on exactly the same piece of tarmac. We actually then sometimes communicate through either Discord or through Zoom or something, and have a separate computer set up where we're actually chatting to each other in real life, and then our avatars are racing against each other. But if you think about the amount of data that something like Zwift knows about me as a user, it knows my age, it knows how often I exercise, it knows what sort of bike I've got, it knows how often I log on, it knows so much information about me. It could very, very easily, in a programmatic advertising way, target specific ads to me. So I think there's a huge opportunity for marketers to sort of market their products in a very targeted way to people in that environment. And I think that's probably the biggest opportunity available right now to people. If they think about, well, hang on, that's just a display sort of marketing way. But I think the easiest way, if you're cycling along, I might see one ad based on my profile on the banners, and someone else might see a different ad, right? And so, but then you're not going to get off your bike and click buy something. And I think where the experience is going, and I've seen some wonderful experiences of this, is the high-end brands, so the Gucci's and the Armani's of the world, they're creating these sort of virtual shops where you can actually potentially put headsets on and wander around and touch and feel things. And I think everybody sort of says the metaverse is a bit like Ready Player One, but it's not a million miles away from that, right? The technology is happening; it's growing really fast, and with the advent of just doing it on your phone with Apple Pay or something, right? There'll be hundreds of people listening to this who've authorized an in-game purchase for their children just to give themselves an easier life. And that's an example of the sort of virtual transactions in the metaverse. So it's already happening, and I think the ability to create an experience and engage users, and ideally multiple users at the same time, is where the opportunity. And I think the enabler has been the speed of the internet. Mm-hmm. This sort of thing wasn't possible until recently, because of the speed of the internet.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And that paints a really nice picture, because it gives, it's things that we know, but connecting them, this is what it is going to be, just on a larger scale. We're already been teased into this pain for things virtually. I really like how you painted that picture. So can I ask then what the immediate impact is on the retail industry as we know it, like the traditional retail industry? Are we talking about a situation here where retailers big and small need to go and make a virtual store right now, and traditional brick and mortar is dying? Like, is that where this is headed, or is that just an overreaction and there's still going to be some balance? How do you see it?
I think you're going to get the early adopters. So you can go online now and go to a metaverse version of Wendy's, right? So you can go and have a look at a virtual burger store and have a virtual online experience. And for me, that I like the idea of that, but Wendy's is probably the one end of the spectrum where I'd have thought that's about eating something, right? So I get the idea. If I can have an avatar of me, and I can go and dress myself, or I can take a virtual, and I can go and have an experience, or maybe even take a drive in a car, or all those sorts of things. So I think it's you don't need to panic. I don't think there's a panic. It's not going to be an or else or instead of. It's going to be as well as. I think what we will see happening over time is, as people upgrade and change their websites, they will become more content rich and they will become more experiential. So a bit like the in-store experience in some instances, if you think about an Apple store, it's as much about the experience of going into the Apple store. You have to book your appointment, you have to go to this, as well as it is about just picking the product off and taking it to the till, right? So I think that if more retailers can think about what's the experience of my brand when you walk into the front door of my website, and now with the speed of technology and the ability, and I also think the thing that's going to help the acceleration of this is the change in the cookie laws and rules, because people are going to probably end up having to log into a website to get the best out of the website. So they're then going to have first-party data, and then they can really edit and tailor that experience to the user based on their previous knowledge, what they know about that person. So I don't think we need to panic and say, we've got to panic, we need a metaverse store. And I think also there's people like like Meta, the very clever change of the name of Facebook.
How timely,
and people they're all trying to sort of race to own the space. But I think it's more about giving users an experience on a device and in a format that they would expect. So if you're Nike and you're trying to target 12 to 18-year-olds, you probably need to be really thinking about this, or probably have already thought about it. And if you're an older brand, you probably don't need to worry about it just yet. Maybe what's going on with your competitors, but you definitely need to have it on a list. And somebody needs to be thinking about, what is our plan? Even if the plan is just to watch the competition and see what they do, I don't think right now people are just going to start buying from metaverse stores and it replace existing stores. I just don't think that's going to happen. But I think over time things will change.
Yeah, I think we'll slowly start to see a shift in what was traditional. I mean, there's always going to be a shift. The pandemic's only accelerated that, and the technology being available, like you said, has accelerated it further. So it actually seems like a really relevant time then to ask about the limitations of the metaverse, because like you talked about, there's barriers that exist for some, maybe they don't exist for others based on the industry they're in. Building a virtual store from a customer perspective, like, what's needed for it to take off, for the metaverse to take off in a really big way that customers accept it? And this is something I think is relevant because we're seeing a lot of hype around it, even still, a couple of months after, obviously, the meta change and all the big brands going in, and you're hearing a lot about it. There's a lot of hype around it right now, but what is it going to take for the metaverse to really stick long-term after the hype sort of wears off?
I think ultimately there's a bit like when Google organized the whole internet, and that sort of, it didn't quite become the internet, but it became a good starting point. And it's like at the moment, if you're an end user, you're probably accessing the metaverse probably through an app or an existing brand that you may already have an association to. So I think once it becomes like more generic, or where it's like you could potentially have two Google searches: search the internet or search the metaverse. All right, maybe, don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Or the other one would be, what's going to be the Shopify for creating your metaverse experience? So if we make it easy and accessible for an SME style e-commerce business or an SME content creator to be able to produce high level, high graphical quality experiences like the big brands can, I think that's when the game changes. So if you think about when Netflix first built their first store in, I don't know, 98, 99, they had to have 23 servers, and they had to build this, they had to build that, everything was crashing. It was, whereas now, if you're setting up an e-commerce store, you can go online and get Shopify, you can buy some space in the cloud, and within a few days, you can get a payment with Stripe, and you can set your store up relatively quickly in a matter of days, if not hours. Whereas currently, if you wanted to set up a metaverse experience, you'd still need a lot of developers, and you'd still need a lot of creative and this and that. So the minute somebody creates that sort, and I imagine Facebook will launch something that will do that.
Yeah.
Well, Meta, sorry, not Facebook.
Facebook powered by Meta.
They might have a thing called Metaverse. But I think that's what, or if you can, the perfect scenario for that, I suppose, would be, Marc, is a bit like if you're in Bing ads and you've got a Google campaign, there's a button that says import my Google campaign, and it turns it into a Bing campaign. If you imagine someone builds a tool that says import my Shopify store, and it becomes a metaverse store, and it just sucks in all the products, sucks in this, sucks in that, and then suddenly you then have a layout in a template format that creates a much more engaging content. Because the idea of this is you could potentially put a headset on and go on a virtual store, right? And that's really how, if you think right back to the beginning of the internet, that's what people thought was going to happen.
Yeah.
Right, you were going to walk around these shops and pick things off shelves, but the internet wasn't fast enough. We didn't have the processing power, whereas now we do. So, and is that going to be more interesting? And almost it's like that endless store as well, isn't it? Like that endless scroll.
Yeah, it never ends.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I think once the ability to create these experiences becomes more cost effective for everyday companies, and in the middle of all of this, I suppose, sits product feeds, doesn't it? And making sure, if it's all about e-commerce, but I don't think it is all about e-commerce. I think it's about experiences. Would be my view.
Yeah, well, I think that's, again, a really great point, and one that I think just gave a lot of great ideas to a lot of retailers, and that's what we want to do. So that's perfect. And it leads really well into what I wanted to address next. And you did give a couple of these away, which is great. It leads in really, really well. And you brought this up in our conversation in the past, something that I really want to bring up again. And it's how retailers can get involved without having to go all the way to 10 and build a virtual store, because we know the expensive, like you just mentioned, the tools aren't available unless you're a massive team with a lot of developers. But the different levels of involvement that retailers can have and get involved with the metaverse to get what they need and get what they want out of it. Maybe they don't want that whole shopping experience. They just want to get involved in a different way. So kind of setting the stage there, how can... And what are the different levels of involvement that retailers can look at, perhaps dipping their feet into this world without going all the way in?
Yeah, well, I think they've got to think about which metaverse platforms, I think they'll probably start becoming platforms, are your customers involved with. So if you sell cycling products to middle-aged men like myself who ride bikes, then Zwift would be an obvious place to go and say, well, is there a way I can promote my brand within Zwift in their metaverse and engage with their audience? And then you could hopefully, because of the way digital measurement works, see the impact of that and then decide, right, okay, we know that this seems to work, right? How can we create something of our own? And people are already doing it. So certain brands, I can go on, and if I do a certain number of trips or bike rides in a certain period, I can qualify for a free branded shirt. Okay. And then actually what happens is I get a discount code off the actual brand to encourage me to go buy that brand in the real world. So there's clever ways you could engage either through promotions or coupons or loyalty. And I think that people, so is Fortnite just actually going to become an advertising platform? Right. So is Fortnite actually going to be a platform to sell trainers to kids? Who knows? Or the same with Snapchat or all these other places where people are creating an avatar of something. So I think if you're a brand, you could, or a retailer, you could dip in to see, well, where are my audience actually hanging out in the metaverse? What are the platforms that are coming up? So, and how can I engage as a partner in that platform? Because you don't necessarily have to create the whole thing. It's just, I suppose, let's go find out where our customers are hanging out in the metaverse and see if we can go hang out in the same space and promote our brand or promote our products. And I think that'd be an obvious place to start.
Yeah, and I guess it comes down to any new venture a business takes, no matter what industry, but it's sounding pretty universal that you have to understand your audience to learn where to go. You don't advertise in any magazine, you advertise where your audience is or what website where your customers are. This is the same kind of thing if you don't have the capacity to go and just build a full retail store, is what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think if you think about the old school marketing, if you were promoting a product, you go say, I need a list of this. I'll go to a list broker and I'll get a list, and then I'm going to send them a direct mail and we're going to do this. At the moment, there probably isn't yet a comprehensive list of, someone almost needs to build the Google for the metaverse of like, what are the most popular platforms? What are they doing? What's the engagement? Maybe there's a business idea in there, but there's what's the directory of all the different metaverse sites? What's their target audience? What opportunities to promote or engage or what are there within that? Or do you as a brand take the big leap and think, well, we've got to create our own experience? And I think for some brands, that would make sense. So certainly car brands, or I would say there's huge opportunities for travel, huge opportunities around all of that. And I suppose it was probably what Google is like. If you think about Google Maps and Google Earth, right, is that not just a version of this where they were trying to, and it never really took off, but there was a talk in Google Street View where they were going to start putting adverts in the Street View. Right.
Yep.
So view of so you're looking at the street view of the pizza shop. You could have an advert of order pizza now within that thing, and I think technically you could probably still do it, but it never really became a thing. But then if you think about, I'm then in a car which has got a interactive Google Street View sat nav, right, which you can get. And you could then potentially have, you're driving past the pizza shop and then you just see order the pizza, and then you click it on your sat nav, order the pizza, and then it's delivered to your home. So I think it's all about understanding the context and your audience. But you're absolutely right, understanding where the audience are, and that goes down to all good marketing. Though it's got to start with the audience, and then it's got to start with the context and what is it we're trying to promote to the audience. But I half of me thinks, on one side, it sounds quite daunting, the metaverse, but on the other side, it's hugely exciting because we've been limited with the channels, and we're almost all addicted to Google still, or addicted a little bit to Google. We were addicted to Facebook until Apple broke it last year.
Yes.
But yeah, so it's like this gives the creative marketers a new opportunity to find and engage their audience in a different way.
So it's just, if we think of it as a new social platform rather than an entirely new world, it suddenly becomes a lot more approachable. And like you said, it's going to be an endless amount of ways to get involved. And I think that's a key thing for retailers looking to get into the space and maybe uncertain about the investment capacity or like their resources and their team? Like, how deep of a thing do we need to build, like an entire department for Metaverse? And clearly not. It's just another platform to sort of educate yourself on and get involved with in the right way. And I love that.
Yeah, no, I think it's probably the way people should have looked at TikTok in the first instance. I think they looked at TikTok as, it's just like a Facebook, but actually how you interact with Facebook is very different to what you would do on TikTok. People watch TikTok like they watch YouTube. Like they go to TikTok for entertainment and sit there and absorb media, right? Whereas on Facebook, you're interacting and watching and commenting and sharing and chatting, whereas TikTok's more a YouTube level, I would say, experience, and it's more about engaging content. So, but I think we're all going to learn a lot really quickly over the next 2 to 3 years. And if anything, half the stuff we probably predicted won't come true. And there'll be a load of new opportunities that come along, and we'll be sat there going, "Oh, that was so obvious. We should have done that." So. I also think the in-store experience with your phone now and virtual overlays and what you can do. IKEA tried it. I don't know if they've still got it live, but they tried this thing where you can use your phone to put the furniture in your room.
Yep.
And arguably that is that Metaverse? Is that AI? Is that AR? What is that?
It's breaking new boundaries. Yeah. I used it.
All of those things.
It does work.
Yeah. And all of those things, and it's the same with the cars. A lot of people, you can go configure a car, and then you can hold the phone up outside your house and put the car on your drive, and all these sort of things. And it's like, where does that stop and start being the Metaverse? And I think just because it's now got a name, everybody's sort of having a bit of a panic.
Yeah. You're 100% right, because it's finally has a name, but you're 100% right. And a VR and AR overlay into your real world is Ready Player One. I mean, that's Metaverse, I guess, as it's defined now, but it has a name. No, that's brilliant. I think it's made me understand it a whole lot more, and I've spent the last months researching this to death, but literally how you described it made it so much more understandable. John, it's been fantastic talk, and I really hope the audience got as much out of this as I did. As I said, I learned a lot. I could listen to you all day. You're brilliant. So thank you so much for this. Thank you for the time, and a fantastic talk, a really, really great episode. But it's been a pleasure having you break down this what was once a complex topic, but is no longer. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you for having me on, Marc. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
Absolutely. And for our audience, thank you so much for tuning in to listen to this great podcast on the digital retailer. It's been fantastic. As I mentioned, really broke down what was once complex and now seems pretty approachable, and I hope that feels the same way for you. So start researching, find your audience, and get involved in any way you can. Just treat it like another platform, and you'll get there as soon as you can. Thank you for watching this episode. If you do have any questions about what you heard today, you can find John or myself on LinkedIn. There we can answer any questions you may have, or go ahead in the comment section and just leave your question or comment there, and we'll address it as we do. So we'll leave it there. Everyone have a fantastic day wherever in the world you may be. It's been a great episode, and I really appreciate you all being with me. So have a fantastic day. We'll see you on the very next episode of The Digital Retailer. Signing off for now. Have a great day.